everything in the visible world is simultaneously itself, a boot, floor, but in visual terms, also a representation of the idea itself. I knew instantly that that was sort of my subject, my theme, and I think what I've always wanted to do in my work is to drive a very tiny wedge between the name on the one hand and the named on the other, the thing which is named. So how do you do that in painting? How do you make a painting which is simultaneously itself and somehow aerates the notion that this agreement that surrounds the world as we know it? I can't say how, but all I can say is that's what I've been trying to do. My starting point has always been visuality itself, that is to say, looking at things. I'm a looker. One of my personal compass points, being an American, being of the generation that I am, with the education that I was fortunate to receive, one of the compass points for my development has always been the so-called New York School of painting, the painters grouped around the title abstract expressionism. But I'm not an expressionist, I'm not an abstractionist, so why would that appeal to me? It has more to do with the way they considered the autonomy of the painting itself, of the art object itself. So even though I'm essentially a figurative painter in a very funny way, kind of representational painter, the approach to what a painting is and what painted space is and what how a painting stands in relationship to reality is something which I feel I've inherited from this much earlier generation. What I'm primarily interested in is taking the world apart into its component parts, laying all the parts on the floor, and then somehow putting it back together again. And then when you put it back together, it doesn't go back together perfectly. Some pieces don't fit, some you forgot where that screw goes, and so you put it back together in a kind of provisional way in which holds together but is always threatening to fall apart again. And that's the state that when I've arrived at that state, I feel like I've done a painting. I've done one of my paintings. Now, don't ask me why. I think that's worth doing, or why it's that, not something else, but that's what it is. I'm always impressed by artists who can start literally with a blank canvas. I mean, we all start with a blank canvas, in fact, but some people can leave it blank longer than others. I have to start with an image, with something, either something I've seen and photographed or something I've found, some other source. What I look for in the photograph and what I do in the photograph, if I'm doing it, is a pattern of light and shadow. Everything else in the painting that happens is a response to that first thing. It starts with some perception of light and dark that happens to be an image. And all the other components are a way of having a conversation with that first image. I don't work from maquettes or even from working drawings. I tend to start with the first thing, and very intuitively, without very many steps ahead. I'm really lousy at chess. I'm the world's worst chess player. So I can't think very many moves ahead. The first thing sort of requires the second thing, and then those two things sort of require a third, and so on and so forth, until there's a fullness or that sense of balance. And one of the questions I'm often asked is, how do I know when to stop? And the answer is, I don't. Sometimes you just stop out of exhaustion. Sometimes you stop. I remember something that Jasper Johns once said when asked the same question. He said that he stops when to go further would make it into a very different kind of painting. There's no right or wrong. It's a matter of temperament, really.